Very much for the opportunity to be in here, and since you brought it up, the rodeo's in 3 weeks in Williamson County, so please feel free to come out, and anyone to contact me, we will see that you get into that rodeo free of charge, except George. Senator Henry, good seeing you. Thought I'd spend a little time. I think the brochure that was passed out, not enough for everyone, but certainly enough for the tables to ask some questions at the end. I understand that I've got a few minutes and got to get everyone out of here by 1 o'clock, and I promise I will do that. Williamson County just recently finished a census period just like Davidson County did, in which the 2010 census indicated that Williamson County was the fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee. That's based on population. We grew approximately 44 to 45% in a 10-year window. Many of you have gray hair like I do, and you can remember Williamson County being a very very rich in horses and cattle, and not near that many people in terms of population. What changed all of that? What made the difference? Part of the success we've had is always about our people. But in the mid-1980s, a little company by the name of Saturn decided to come to a town just south of Franklin. The owner of GM decided to pick a location that absolutely springboarded, if that's good English, our community into an area that we weren't really ready for. We've had some wonderful leaders prior to myself. Jerry Sharp, Bob Rain, some of them you would know. Some pro-builders, some pro-growth, some pro-education. I guess I'm a blend of all. I actually started my political career in 1986 as a county commissioner while being in the private business. And I started because public education was so bad in Williamson County. I grew up in a family of public educators, and it was very disheartening to me to see what was happening to our schools. And so a bunch of us who played poker on Friday night decided we'd raise up enough campaign money, and Senator Henry, I won my first election on gambling money. I had been passing around the table, put the quarter in the pot, and that's how I won. We invested in public education. We believe in public education in Williamson County. Our budget is nowhere near Mayor Cardine's budget, I promise you. But it's a lot for Williamson County. Our budget this year will be in the neighborhood of $400 million. Schools get 64% of every dollar that we bring in. And if you throw the debt load in that we have to pay for, it brings it up to 71%. So 29% of everything else we do in Williamson County comes off from those dollars. We invested in education back in those early days in the 80s, and we have continued to invest in education as we go down the time. Just got some late numbers last night, or night before last at a meeting, that we are expecting another 896 children over this year's enrollment numbers for this coming August. Our numbers have been averaging about 1,000 youth children, some 1,500, some 600 or 700. But even during the slow times of the recession times, our schools continued to grow. And in 2007 and 2008, we built 5 schools and opened them in 13 months to get the doors open. So we're accustomed to having to build schools. We're accustomed to having to figure out a way to pay for all those because we've only had two property tax increases in the last 15 years. Our assessed value, again, is what we live on. Our commercial growth, as you will see in some of this information here, carries our weight and carries us for the things we need to do, and we are most appreciative to our business partners. Fast forward to a few years ago, and a little bitty company out in California decided to pick our area, our community, part of it's here in Davidson County, by the name of Nissan, decided to call Tennessee home. Why did they do that? We were told over and over and repeatedly that this state is a low tax state, and I believe it is. We were told over and over and over that it's a good place to do business, and I believe that. They looked at our area, and the president of that company came to us, and like so many businesses that roll into our different cities and counties, as the senator would know, they want to know, well, what's the incentive package? We've done 9 incentive packages since 1988. 9. Not everyone gets an incentive package. They have to bring jobs. They have to bring difference. They have to bring a difference. When Mr. Carlos Stone and I met with several of his handlers, and I had my lawyers there, we asked him what he thought about public education. We already knew this man was a highly learned, highly educated individual that spoke 4 or 5 different languages. And he looked at us and he said, that's one of the reasons we're looking at your area. And we thanked him, and we didn't have to give any of our tax dollars away on the public education side. We've never given a penny away of our dollars. What does that mean to people like Bob Anderson, who I do know, but he is not a relative, because he was a relative, he'd be in jail, and I would be too. We'd be doing business with each other, and we can't do that. What does that mean to our community when we say, what does that mean to businesses that come to our community and say that our public education is sacred? You can't have any of those dollars. We want you, we'll work with you, we'll try to blend in. We ask you to blend in to support what we're trying to do, because our graduation rate is 94%. We're proud of that. The only thing I had to do with public education, we control the funding, a little bit different than the way that Metro does. I seriously doubt in my lifetime that we'll ever see a metropolitan form of government in Williamson County. I can't imagine the 6 cities, much less Brentwood and Franklin, ever agreeing on the same method of operation. We have 6 cities, 6 mayors, 6 everything. But you all in Davidson County have different mayors and different council members all over, and you do a good job. We feel like we do a good job, and half of my time I spend shaking hands, giving speeches, and working with other mayors throughout our city. It's important we all learn to work together. It's also important, as we meet with Carl Dean, as we meet with the other mayors throughout the Middle Tennessee area, I'm going to give you a statistic I think some of you may know, but it's so critical to those in education, whether you're in the public sector, the private sector, or you're in higher ed. You have an organization that's organized here in Nashville. It's called Nashville Next. Go to the website, pull it up, and see what they say about the population for Middle Tennessee in 2040. 2040 is not that far along, but in 2040 in Middle Tennessee, there's to be 1 million more people for our community. 1 million more people. I'm not sure where we're going to put them all. Not sure where we'll have all those schools. But there's a reason people move here. If I could just digress one moment, George, to ask this question. If you were born, if you were raised in Davidson County, would you raise your hand? Look around. The rest of us moved here. And the proud heritage of the people that were born and raised here, that's kind of the same percentage I would think I would get in Williamson County. Maybe a little bit different, as my partner on the Williamson County Fair in the front row here knows. We brought back a fair that had been dead for 55 years, and it's been very successful. We keep it clean, there's no alcohol, we have plenty of law enforcement. And we had over 200,000 people last year, and we had no $0 of government involved. Things can be done if you run it on a business model, and 100% volunteers on 200,000 people, and we've got 2 paid people. 2. So we're proud of that. We're proud of so many things, but where are some of those areas we need to look for the future? And one of those is, how do we handle 1 million more people? When I told you earlier that we were the fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee, what I didn't tell you was In our unincorporated area, we grew 100 people in 10 years. Our cities grew. If you want to come to Williamson County, you're going to come to our cities. And you're going to live within those city rims if you want the kind of services that you're more than likely are expecting. Anybody in here in this room still on septic tank? 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest of us are all on probably sewer. We don't have any sewer in Williamson County in the unincorporated area. So our growth pattern stops real drastically. And you have to understand that concept. Nor do I have any involvement with water. We have 9 utility companies that we have to live and work with. So our growth pattern will continue to be in our cities, and our rural areas will remain rural. We will still be the 4th largest beef producer. We will continue to have the products that we need to have, that people come to town and they drive to Leader's Fork and they love it. Or they'll go to College Grove and see a whole different way of life. They'll go to Burwood, they'll go to Rutherford, they'll go to Little Texas, they'll go to all these little communities. And they'll want to build, and then they'll find out that they have to put in a septic tank, and it requires about an acre or 2 acres, in some cases 5, and that's okay. And that's been successful for us. That's the model. That may sound a little arrogant. It's not. It's the way we have got our zoning and our planning planned out. We just finished updating our comprehensive land plan, and that will be put in place for the next 15 years. So our growth pattern should be stable, and we can plan for our schools. And we are still building schools. We'll have a new high school being built over in the Noblesville community, because in the counties outside of metro, counties have to provide the education. And the cities, even though they're taxpayers there, do not funnel in money to that. That is the responsibility of the counties and the function of counties, thanks to the legislators many years ago. And we continue to have to use that model in which to plan. And in order to plan, we have to know where people are going to live and where they're going to raise their families. And so we hope we've got things in place. I want to allow some time for questions, but I want to leave you with this. I don't mean to come off arrogant. I mean to come off very positive. We welcome you to our community. We welcome you to your business to our community. We feel like we've got something that's a little different than Davidson County or Wilson County or Rutherford County, and these are all my partners as mayors. And we all have to learn to work together in regional issues, whether it's transportation or in public education or in jobs. But as I also have argued with the state of Tennessee, we're one of 2 counties in the state of Tennessee that has a AAA, Moody's AAA, and Standard & Poor's best rating. Hamilton County received theirs about 3-4 years ago, and we've had ours 9 years. So we feel like we've got some money in the bank, we've got some things that we can plan for, and we really, really like the idea of Williamson County not having to pay for all those things that the state legislators oftentimes pass down, no response. But we are all about taking care of our own, and if you pass a law, send some money down with it. Or if the feds in Washington want to pass it, send it down with it so we can help do this. We can handle that. What we can't handle are all the rules and the regulations that oftentimes are passed without the consideration of the people. That's you and me, who has to pay for all that. Our tax rate is $2.31 a hundred, and we're proud of it. Questions? Yes, ma'am? You're the public speaker, so I have to be real careful with you.
There is a topic that's been in the news frequently with the amount of dollars going into education. I just want to ask how you feel about core curriculum.
I'm not involved in that. I can answer it this way to you. Core curriculum was the question she asked. Huge amount of discussion certainly coming out of our county on that. When the state of Tennessee received the dollars from Washington, D.C., and I think, if I remember correctly, it was over $500 million we received going to race to the top dollars. Those were good dollars. We needed those dollars. But it's kind of like I have with my children. If I give them money, I expect them to do certain things. And Washington had a lot of strings for that $500 million that they sent down to the state of Tennessee. I still say it was a good deal, but built into that contract is some verbiage that all of us should be concerned with. That's how I have to answer it. Any other questions? Scare everybody off?
I have a question. The outcomes of students in Williamson County compared to other counties is greater. We all know that. But the amount spent per student isn't as great as the greater outcomes. So there seems to be, the more you spend isn't the better you get. What about Williamson County makes better student outcomes?
Well, I can answer that. The question you did in here, what makes, why do we spend less dollars on children than say, other areas? And I guess the first thing you have to realize is that I believe education starts at home. I believe that we as parents, and I'm into the grandparents now, and I love it. You were bragging about your child, your future child, where they indoor-outdoor plumbing here tonight. I think there's a greater reward in grandparents. We as grandparents would probably jump to grandchildren before we had children if we knew that was possible. I just love my grandchildren. They're wonderful. And I think when you look back at the dollars spent, if it's in healthcare, I was talking to this lady here earlier, and I do serve on a couple of boards. Throwing money at issues without having some way of accountability and outcomes is not the way I would want to measure anything I do in private business or in government. And for some reason, the bar is always presented, you don't spend as much money in public education as somebody else. That somebody else could go to a different state, they have a state income tax, they want to spend more money. I think when parents get involved in your community, you do have better outcomes. And I think in our community, I was a boy that grew up on the other side of the tracks from in East Tennessee. The daddy worked shift work. Mom canned green beans, and whoever had beets here, I appreciate that. I hadn't had those in a long time. But I came from a different way of life, but there wasn't a lot of democracy in my house about whether I was going to graduate from high school. That was not allowed at the kitchen table because my mother and daddy knew the success was to attend the Belmonts and the Lipscombs and the Vanderbilts and the UTs. That was the future. Education was the future. And so that is a very high priority in our community, and some of that is social economics. Some of that is how we're raised, and this next level that we're going to implode upon our children. But it is what it is, and being the lowest on the totem pole of how much money we spend is a good thing from a taxpayer standpoint that I like, that I can say we're getting good results for less dollars. Now, do we not argue with our school board? You bet we do. We'll have a good old knockdown this coming Monday about how much money they want, how much they'll get. But that's part of the process in which we have to go from. But the parents drive expectations. Another question? Yes, ma'am.
What's the median income in Williamson County?
Median income is, I think it's on this chart. I hate to quote it. One of the figures that we have, and I know a lot of you work in Williamson County, our graduation rate, our workforce rate of graduation is, I think it's a little over 52% of everyone in Williamson County has a BS degree or better. And therefore you would have a higher socioeconomic take-home check. But I still think we can have a good living and a good standard of living and still be sensible people and work with everybody in Williamson County. Yes, sir.
How do you real urban, centralized city with, say, Fairview, very sprawling, rural, economically different completely? How have you been able to pull all this together?
I don't know that I've pulled it together, just 30 years in politics and work with them. You know, I think one of the reasons we'll never see a metropolitan form of government is because if it was all one, you'd never see the beauty and the historical value of Franklin, because Brentwood would say, well, we would want one of those, or Fairview would want one of those. But when you have your own taxing division within your cities, then you get to dictate how you're going to develop your city. 25 years ago, Franklin didn't look like it does today. Many of you know that. Fairview has chosen to go a little different route. Excuse me, they've gone a little different route. But again, Fairview City doesn't control its water and sewer. That's controlled out of Dixie. And they sold that out several years ago. So that growth they're going to have is going to have to go back to the Dixon County Water and Wastewater to have approval. Senator?
What about the prospects for a state fair?
No way in Williamson County, Senator. But, yes, Senator Henry asked, what are the prospects for a state fair? I grew up working with livestock. I think fairs are good, and they are really good. As Terry will tell you, for folks in Williamson County, our children in Brentwood and Franklin think chocolate milk comes from a chocolate cow, sir. And when we see moms and dads, for the first time, for several years, we have bred a pig. And the gestation period of just about any animal can be predicted. When she had her piglets, a few hours before our fair, and she had more piglets than she had spigots. I'll use that term. There were a lot of concerned people what's going to happen, and we had to separate the piglets from the mother sow, and I think you would understand that. A country boy and girl would understand that. And we don't highlight that, but we need to teach that, and we need to educate. And when you have a fair teaches agriculture. No, we're not going to make any farmers out of anybody in Williamson County. But we are going to teach you that it is important to learn how to raise tomatoes and some of the basic vegetables and produce those things and teach you a little bit about some things that we're no longer getting in education. You're pulling me off the hook, but the state fair needs to occur. It needs to occur in our state. We do not have a good state fair. It's got rough. I wouldn't bring my grandchildren up here, and I'm on that board. It needs to be clean, it needs to be safe, and it needs to be where women feel comfortable, because women control where these events are, how they're going to get controlled, just like they do the healthcare dollars, not us men. We can go to a restroom anywhere. They won't do that. So they're not going to do that. So when we learn how to have a good, clean, safe fair, it'll come back, and it'll come back in a big way. I think the people are ready for it. Thank you all.